The scorching Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty trail as Jake Thompson rode his weathered horse toward the small frontier town of Redemption Creek. The seasoned cowboy had seen his share of hardship in 35 years of life, but nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to encounter on that fateful afternoon in 1882. As Jake's horse clip-clopped along the rocky path, a small figure emerged from behind a cluster of sagebrush. It was a boy, no more than 10 years old, with torn clothes and dirt-stained cheeks marked by the clean tracks of dried tears. His small frame shook as he stepped directly into Jake's path, forcing the cowboy to pull his reins tight. "Whoa there! Thunder!" Jake murmured to his horse, studying the child with concerned eyes. The boy's appearance told a story of desperation and loss that made Jake's heart clench with unexpected emotion. "Sir," the boy said, his voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying the weight of unbearable sorrow, "can you bury my brother?" Jake dismounted slowly, his boots hitting the ground with a soft thud. He knelt down to meet the boy at eye level, noticing how the child's hands trembled like autumn leaves in the wind. "What's your name, son?" "Timothy, sir. Timothy Walsh." The boy's voice cracked as he spoke. "My brother, his name was Samuel. He was only 14, but he took care of me after Ma and Pa died from the fever last spring." Jake felt his throat tighten. He had lost his own family years ago and recognized the hollow look of grief in the boy's eyes. "Where is your brother? Now, Timothy?" The boy pointed toward a small grove of cottonwood trees about 50 yards away. "Over there, sir. He's been sick for 3 days, burning up with fever. This morning he just stopped breathing." Timothy's composure finally cracked, and tears began flowing freely down his dusty cheeks. Jake placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "How long have you two been on your own?" "Since the fever took our parents 6 months ago." Samuel said, "We had to be strong, that we'd find a place where we belonged. We've been walking for weeks heading west, looking for our uncle in California, but Samuel got sick and now—" Timothy's words dissolved into quiet sobs. The cowboy's heart ached as he watched this small child carry such enormous grief. Jake had always been a man of few words, preferring action to empty promises. He stood up, his decision already made before he fully realized it himself. "Timothy, I want you to know that your brother won't be buried alone in this desert. We're going to give Samuel a proper burial with respect and dignity." Jake's voice carried a warmth that seemed to ease some of the tension in the boy's small shoulders. They walked together toward the grove of trees, where Jake found Samuel's still form lying peacefully under the shade of the largest cottonwood. The older boy had clearly fought hard against whatever illness had claimed him, but he looked serene now, as if finally at rest. Jake removed his hat and bowed his head for a moment of silent respect. Then he turned to Timothy. "Tell me about your brother. What kind of person was Samuel?" Timothy's eyes lit up despite his grief. "He was the best brother anyone could have. When I was scared at night, he'd tell me stories about brave cowboys and adventures. He always made sure I ate first, even when we didn't have much food. He taught me to read, using an old Bible our Ma gave us before she died." As Timothy spoke, Jake began gathering stones for a proper grave marker. The boy continued sharing memories, each story painting a picture of a young man who had grown up too fast, carrying responsibilities far beyond his years. Samuel always said that family wasn't just about blood, but about people who care for each other no matter what. He said that someday we'd find people who would love us like family again. Timothy wiped his nose with his sleeve. "But now it's just me, and I don't know what to do." Jake paused in his stone gathering and looked directly at the boy. "Timothy, what if I told you that Samuel was right? What if family really is about people who care for each other?" The boy's eyes widened with a mixture of hope and fear. "What do you mean, sir?" I mean that after we lay your brother to rest, you don't have to face this world alone anymore." Jake's voice was steady, but filled with emotion he rarely allowed himself to show. "I've got a ranch about 2 days' ride from here. It's not much, but it's got a roof that doesn't leak, warm meals every day, and room for a boy who needs a place to belong." Timothy stared at Jake with disbelief. You'd want me? But I'm just a kid. I can't work like a man or nothing." Jake chuckled softly. "Son, I've been alone on that ranch for more years than I care to count. I could use the company, and I bet you're stronger and more capable than you realize. Besides, every ranch needs someone to help with the horses, tend the chickens, and maybe learn a thing or two about being a cowboy." For the first time since Jake had met him, Timothy smiled. It was small and tentative, but it was genuine. Samuel would like that. He always wanted to be a cowboy. As the afternoon sun began its descent toward the western horizon, Jake and Timothy worked together to prepare Samuel's final resting place. They dug a proper grave beneath the cottonwood trees, and Jake fashioned a cross from fallen branches, carving Samuel's name and age into the wood with his knife. When the burial was complete, Jake and Timothy stood side by side, their heads bowed. In respect, Jake spoke a few simple words about Samuel's courage and love for his brother, while Timothy whispered his own private goodbye. "Is it wrong that I'm not just sad?" Timothy asked quietly as they prepared to leave. "I mean, I miss Samuel something terrible, but there's a little part of me that feels hopeful." Jake placed his hand on the boy's shoulder once again. "Son, grief and hope can live in the same heart. Samuel fought so hard to take care of you because he wanted you to have a good life. Feeling hopeful about your future is the best way to honor his memory." As they mounted Thunder together, Timothy riding behind Jake, the boy asked, "What's your ranch like?" "Well, it's got a barn full of horses that could use a gentle hand, a creek that runs clear and cold even in summer, and the most beautiful sunsets you've ever seen. There's a small cabin with 2 bedrooms, and I think one of them would be perfect for a boy who's ready to learn what it means to be part of a family again." Timothy wrapped his arms around Jake's waist as they rode away from the grove, leaving behind a well-marked grave that would stand as a testament to a young man's love and sacrifice. As Thunder carried them toward their new life together, both the man and the boy felt something they hadn't experienced in a long time: the warmth of belonging to someone who truly cared. The desert wind carried their voices as they talked about horses and chores and the adventures that lay ahead. 2 souls who had found each other at exactly the moment when they both needed family the most. 3 weeks had passed since Jake Thompson brought Timothy Walsh to the Broken Arrow Ranch, and life had settled into a comfortable rhythm that surprised both of them. The ranch, nestled in a valley between rolling hills dotted with oak trees, had indeed become the sanctuary Jake had promised. Timothy woke each morning to the sound of roosters crowing and the gentle lowing of cattle in the distance. His small bedroom, which Jake had hastily prepared with clean blankets and a sturdy wooden bed, had gradually filled with the boy's few possessions. Samuel's worn Bible, a carved wooden horse his father had made years ago, and a collection of smooth stones he'd been gathering from the creek. "Morning, Timothy," Jake called from the kitchen as the boy padded barefoot across the wooden floors. "Breakfast is almost ready." The cowboy had proven surprisingly adept at cooking simple meals, though Timothy suspected Jake was trying extra hard to make sure his new ward was well fed. Scrambled eggs with strips of bacon, fresh biscuits with honey, and milk from their own cow had become their morning routine. "The horses are acting restless this morning," Timothy observed, peering out the window toward the corral where 5 horses stood pawing at the ground. In the short time he'd been at the ranch, the boy had developed an uncanny ability to read the animals' moods. Jake smiled as he set a plate in front of Timothy. "That's because today's the day we start your real education, son. After breakfast, I'm going to teach you how to properly saddle and ride Thunder." Timothy's eyes lit up with excitement, but Jake caught a flicker of fear as well. What if I fall off? What if I'm not brave enough? Samuel always said I was too small for my own. "Good, Timothy," Jake said, settling into his chair across from the boy. "Being small doesn't make you less brave, and falling off a horse is just part of learning. I've been thrown more times than I can count, and I'm still here to tell about it." After breakfast, they made their way to the corral, where Thunder stood waiting patiently. The big bay gelding had been Jake's companion for over 8 years, and his gentle nature made him perfect for teaching a nervous boy. "First thing you need to understand," Jake explained, running his hands along Thunder's neck, "is that horses can sense your feelings. If you're scared, they'll be scared. If you're calm and confident, they'll trust you." Timothy approached the horse slowly, remembering how Jake had shown him to extend his hand palm up for Thunder to sniff. The horse's warm breath tickled the boy's fingers, and Thunder nickered softly in recognition. "He remembers me," Timothy said with wonder. "Course he does. Animals know when someone has a kind heart." Jake lifted the saddle from the fence rail. "Now watch carefully how I place this. The blanket goes on first, smooth and even, then the saddle." For the next hour, Jake patiently walked Timothy through each step of preparing a horse for riding. The boy's small hands struggled with the heavy saddle, but his determination impressed the cowboy. When Timothy finally managed to secure the cinch properly on his third try, his grin could have lit up the entire valley. "Now comes the real test," Jake said, giving Timothy a boost up into the saddle. "Remember what I told you about staying relaxed?" Timothy's knuckles were white as he gripped the saddle horn, but as Thunder began a slow walk around the corral, the boy's confidence grew. By the end of their first lesson, Timothy was sitting straighter, his hands more relaxed, and his smile genuine. "Samuel would be proud," Timothy said as Jake helped him down from Thunder. "He always wanted to learn to ride properly." That afternoon, while Timothy helped Jake mend fences, the boy began opening up about his life before the tragedy that had orphaned him. He talked about his parents' small farm in Kansas, how his mother had taught him to read, and his father had shown him how to carve wood. He shared memories of Samuel's dreams of adventure and their long journey west. "We slept under the stars most nights," Timothy said, carefully holding a fence post while Jake hammered. "Samuel knew all the constellations. He said the North Star would always help us find our way home, but I never understood what he meant by home." Jake paused in his hammering. "What do you think he meant now?" Timothy considered this carefully, a trait Jake had noticed in the boy. He rarely spoke without thinking first. "I think maybe he meant home isn't a place on a map. It's where you feel safe and loved." "That's pretty wise thinking for someone your age," Jake said, genuinely impressed by the boy's insight. As evening approached, they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Timothy had grown comfortable enough to ask Jake about his own past, and the cowboy found himself sharing stories he'd kept buried for years. "I had a wife once," Jake said quietly. "Her name was Mary. We had dreams of filling this ranch with children, but the fever took her before we could start our family. After that, I thought I was meant to live alone." Timothy moved closer to Jake, on the porch step. "Do you miss her?" "Every day, son. But having you here has reminded me that love doesn't die when someone leaves us. It just finds new ways to grow." That night, as Jake tucked Timothy into bed, the boy asked, "Jake, what if I have nightmares about Samuel again? Then you come find me, and we'll sit by the fire until you feel better. That's what family does, Timothy. We take care of each other." Timothy was quiet for a moment. "Is that what we are now? Family?" Jake's voice was thick with emotion as he answered, "If you want us to be, son, I'd be honored to be your family." "I'd like that," Timothy whispered. "I'd like that very much." Over the following days, their bond deepened. Jake taught Timothy not just about horses and ranching, but about integrity, hard work, and the importance of treating all living things with respect. The boy proved to be a quick learner and eager helper, whether he was gathering eggs from the henhouse or helping Jake doctor a lame calf. One morning, Timothy surprised Jake by producing a small wooden carving. "I made this for you," he said, shyly handing over a miniature horse that bore a remarkable resemblance to Thunder. Jake turned the carving over in his hands, marveling at the detail the boy had managed with just his pocket knife. "Timothy, this is beautiful. Where did you learn to carve like this?" "Pa taught me and Samuel before he died. Samuel was better at it than me, but I remembered what Pa said about letting the wood tell you what it wants to be. Well, this piece of wood clearly wanted to be Thunder, and you listened perfectly." Jake placed the carving on the mantelpiece with obvious pride. "This is going right here where I can see it every day." The simple gesture meant more to both of them than either could express in words. For Timothy, it was proof that his contributions were valued. For Jake, it was a tangible symbol of the family he'd found when he least expected it. As they settled into their evening routine that night, Timothy asked, "Jake, do you think Samuel can see us now? Do you think he knows I'm safe and happy?" Jake looked out the window at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "I believe he can, Timothy, and I think he's proud of the strong, kind young man you're becoming." Timothy smiled and gave Jake an impulsive hug. "Thank you for being my family. Thank you for making me feel like I belong somewhere again." As Jake returned the embrace, he realized that in saving this orphaned boy, Timothy had actually saved him too. They had found in each other exactly what they both needed, a second chance at family, built not on blood, but on choice, love, and the willingness to care for each other, no matter what challenges lay ahead. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to follow more heartwarming stories from the Old West that will touch your soul and remind you of the power of human kindness. Hit that subscribe button now. 6 months had transformed both Jake Thompson and Timothy Walsh in ways neither could have imagined. The Broken Arrow Ranch had become a true home, filled with laughter, shared meals, and the easy companionship that comes from two people who genuinely care for each other. Timothy had grown taller and stronger, his riding skills now impressive enough to earn Jake's proud nods of approval. More importantly, the haunted look had faded from the boy's eyes, replaced by the natural curiosity and joy that belonged to a child who felt secure in the world. But the frontier was never predictable, and this particular autumn brought challenges that would test the strength of their newly formed family bonds. The trouble began on a crisp October morning when Jake noticed storm clouds gathering on the western horizon. Living in this part of Arizona for over a decade had taught him to read weather patterns, and these clouds carried the promise of a violent thunderstorm. "Timothy," Jake called from the porch where he'd been checking his barometer, "looks like we're in for some rough weather. Better help me secure the barn and move the horses to the near pasture." Timothy, who had been practicing his rope work near the corral, immediately dropped his lasso and jogged over to Jake. 6 months of ranch life had taught him to take weather seriously. "How bad do you think it'll get?" "Could be a real storm, son. The kind that reminds you how small we are compared to nature." Jake's voice carried a note of concern that made Timothy pay closer attention. "We need to make sure everything's battened down tight." They spent the next few hours preparing the ranch for the approaching storm. The animals were moved to sheltered areas, loose equipment was secured or brought inside, and Jake double-checked the cabin's shutters and door latches. As they worked, the wind picked up steadily, and the temperature began to drop. "Jake," Timothy said as they finished bringing the last of the chickens into the coop, "I've never been in a really big storm before." I mean, not since I was little and had Ma and Pa to take care of me. Jake paused in his work and looked at the boy, recognizing the slight tremor in Timothy's voice that indicated rising anxiety. Timothy, storms can be scary, but this cabin has weathered plenty of them. We've got food, water, lanterns, and most importantly, we've got each other. By evening, the storm arrived with a fury that exceeded even Jake's expectations. Rain pounded against the windows like thrown pebbles, and wind howled around the cabin with a voice that seemed almost alive. Lightning illuminated the sky in brilliant, white flashes, followed by thunder so loud it shook the entire structure. Timothy sat close to Jake by the fireplace, trying to appear brave, but clearly fighting fear with every crash of thunder. "It sounds like the whole world is coming apart," he whispered. "I know it's frightening, son," Jake said, wrapping an arm around Timothy's shoulders. "But listen to me, this cabin was built to last. My grandfather helped construct these walls with his own hands, using timber that had weathered decades before it was even cut. We're safe here." Around midnight, just when it seemed the storm might be passing, they heard a sound that made both of them freeze. A tremendous crack, followed by a crash that shook the ground beneath their feet. "That wasn't thunder," Timothy said, his voice tight with worry. Jake grabbed a lantern and his rain slicker. "Stay here, Timothy. I need to check what happened." "No!" Timothy jumped up quickly. "We're family, remember. Whatever's out there, we face it together." Despite the danger, Jake felt a surge of pride at Timothy's courage. "All right, but stay close to me and do exactly what I say." They stepped out into the storm together, the rain immediately soaking through their clothes despite their slickers. Jake's lantern cast a weak circle of light in the darkness, barely penetrating the sheets of rain. They didn't have to go far to find the source of the crash. A massive oak tree, easily 100 years old, had been struck by lightning and fallen directly across the path that led to their neighbor's ranch 3 miles away. But more urgently, the tree had crushed part of their own barn, and through the damaged wall they could see Thunder and 2 other horses trapped inside, whinnying in panic. "The horses!" Timothy shouted over the wind. "We have to get them out!" Jake assessed the situation quickly. The barn's main door was blocked by the fallen tree, but there was a side entrance that might still be accessible. The problem was that part of the roof was sagging dangerously, and more of it could collapse at any moment. "Timothy, this is dangerous. The whole structure could come down, but Thunder's in there, and Dusty and Belle." Timothy was already moving toward the damaged barn. "They saved us, Jake. Now we have to save them." Jake realized that this moment would define not just their immediate future, but the very nature of who Timothy would become as a man. The boy was willing to risk his own safety for creatures he loved, just as Samuel had risked everything to protect his younger brother. "All right," Jake decided, "but we do this smart and careful. I'll go in first and lead them out one at a time. You stay by the door and help guide them to safety." Working together in the storm, with lightning still flashing overhead and rain making every surface slippery, they managed to rescue all 3 horses. Jake would lead each frightened animal through the debris, while Timothy held the lantern and spoke in soothing tones that somehow calmed the panicked horses. When Thunder emerged last, the big gelding nuzzled Timothy's shoulder, as if to say thank you. Despite being soaked to the skin and exhausted, Timothy smiled broadly. "We did it, Jake. We saved them all." But their relief was short-lived. As they led the horses to temporary shelter in the cabin's lean-to, Jake noticed Timothy shivering violently. The boy's lips had turned blue, and his teeth were chattering uncontrollably. "Timothy, you're hypothermic. We need to get you warm immediately." Jake quickly got Timothy inside and out of his wet clothes, wrapping him in warm blankets by the fire. He heated water for tea and made sure the boy drank slowly but steadily. For a terrifying hour, Timothy's body shook with cold, but gradually the warmth began to return to his face and hands. "I'm sorry, Jake," Timothy said weakly. I didn't mean to worry you. Son, you have nothing to apologize for. What you did tonight took real courage. You put yourself at risk to save animals you love, and that tells me everything I need to know about the kind of man you're going to become. As the storm finally began to subside in the early morning hours, Jake and Timothy sat together by the dying fire, both wrapped in blankets and sharing the kind of comfortable silence that comes after facing danger together. "Jake," Timothy said quietly, "when I was out there in the storm trying to help save Thunder, I wasn't thinking about being scared anymore. I was just thinking about doing what was right." That's exactly how a man should think, Timothy. Fear is natural, but courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is doing what's right even when you are afraid. Timothy was quiet for a long moment, processing this wisdom. Is that what Samuel did when he took care of me after our parents died? Yes, son. Your brother was scared, but he did what was right anyway. And tonight, you honored his memory by showing that same kind of courage. As dawn broke over the Broken Arrow Ranch, revealing the damage from the storm, but also the survival of everything that truly mattered, Jake and Timothy began planning the repairs they would need to make. The barn could be rebuilt, the fence could be mended, and life could continue. But more importantly, the storm had revealed something precious. Their bond had been tested by real danger and proven unbreakable. They were truly family now, not just in name, but in the deepest sense of the word. They would face whatever challenges came their way together with courage, love, and the unshakable knowledge that they belonged to each other. Timothy had found not just a home and a guardian, but a father figure who believed in him completely. Jake had discovered that opening his heart to love again had made him stronger, not weaker. Together, they represented the very best of what the frontier could offer, the chance to build something beautiful and lasting from the raw materials of hope, determination, and unconditional love. As they prepared breakfast and planned their day, both man and boy knew that whatever storms life might bring in the future, they would weather them together, as family should. Thank you for following Timothy and Jake's incredible journey from strangers to family. Their story reminds us that love and courage can triumph over any storm life sends our way. If this heartwarming tale touched your soul, please subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories from the Old West that celebrate the power of human connection and the true meaning of family. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that they're never truly alone in this world.